What's up, everybody? I'm back. um, this is going to be like the first episode of the revamped version of the podcast. Um, we've got Braytin from Echoes From Oblivion on with this. It was a great conversation that we had, and it was kind of fun to get to talk to him. I'm glad that he was um, able to do it and came on to do this first episode back because we talk about it a little bit, but they were trying to get on the podcast before we ended, like right around the time that we ended it. So it's cool to have him come on and talk like as the first episode back in almost 2 years. Um, so I mean, it's gonna be a little rough. It's gonna be a little weird. I'm a little off. I'm not used to doing this as much as I had been doing it back in the day. So there's a little bit of awkwardness here and there, but you're just gonna kind of have to deal with it. I'm sure that as time goes on and the more I start doing these again, like it'll get easier. Um, but yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this conversation, and thanks for sticking around and checking us back out again. It has been a while since I think I've talked to you in person, like face to face. Like you
What
and
was it
I
like?
have.
Think that festival I put on?
Yeah, I was gonna say that was kind of like where I got to know you a little bit and everything. Kind of started our like relationship. Was when you had us come out and play that festival that you put on in what was that like 2019? I want to say like summer
Uh,
2019.
I think that sounds right.
Yeah, yeah. That was actually the. I was thinking about this. That was actually the first show that Billy, our drummer, played with us. He
Oh,
came in last minute, like literally like the week before that show, and like crammed our entire set. Like tried to learn our entire set in like a week and or two. It might have been a couple of weeks, but I remember it was like real last minute because our original drummer, had quit and left, and so we were like kind of stuck with this. I didn't want to back out of the show, so I was like,
right.
well, if I can find somebody quick enough, so we ended up finding Billy, and that's been amazing for us in Eros to have Billy ever since. But that was like literally the first show he ever played with us was that little festival you put on. Um,
My band actually just had a huge lineup change as well.
yeah, I
So,
saw that. I was like,
uh,
gonna talk with you a little bit about it. I mean, obviously, it's not like I'm not like a big gossip thing. Like mostly what I do on here is just talk, just shoot the shit a little bit. Of course, like we're gonna talk, about like your history and like what you're doing with the band and stuff. But like, I'm not the kind of dude like I don't like being the guy that's like involved in like ooh airing dirty laundry or whatever. Like
oh
I
yeah,
don't. That's
right.
that's not my thing. Like it's really not like. But yeah, I mean, obviously, there was a big lineup change with you guys recently. But you've been through. I mean, you've been through a few musicians since you started it. I mean, well, first off, give me a little bit of the backstory of like what got you starting it and everything.
I've been trying to start a band since 2011. Really, failed every time. So finally, in 2017, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna look on Facebook, see who else is looking for what, and found the original guitarist and the original drummer. They were looking for a bass player and a vocalist. Well, I don't usually play bass, but I own a bass. Why not just give it a shot? And
Yep.
my buddy was a vocalist, so it was two in one.
Well, that worked. It's
So,
funny how it's like so many bands get started in like the most like boring of ways. It's like, this guy just happens to know this other guy that's like, "Hey, why don't you come in and like we need this, why don't you come jam with us?" And I know like one of the guys that you now have in your lineup is a former bandmate of mine And, you know, in projects that like he worked in with us was like the same kind of thing where it was like friend of a friend, you know, you get to know somebody and it's like, hey, we need this. And, you know, and he came in and played with us and it was like, oh, this is working great. Okay, we'll just keep going this way.
And for a while with my band, like we've been lacking something that very important, energy. And he's
Mm.
he's really bringing that back into the mix. So
Well, that's good. It seems like, I mean, you seem like you found some guys relatively quickly from, you know, when the announcements were initially made of, you know, members leaving and changing. And um, so it's a good thing that you managed to like find it. Cause I know from my own personal experiences, I mean, that can sometimes take forever
oh
to
yeah.
find the right person or to find anybody sometimes. Like,
Um, I was more worried about finding a drummer than anything because they're like finding a needle in the haystack. Um,
well, I always say that it's like there's tons of drummers everywhere, but finding one that's actually worth a shit is a whole nother thing. Like,
well, back in 2012, I was trying to, like I said, I've been trying to start bands since like 2011, and there's a guy I went to school with whose dad is in a band in Lafayette. You may know of the band, Taken Effect.
okay,
Uh, I've known him since this guy from high school. So I was like, oh, I'll take a shot in the dark with this. And I asked him, and he seemed down to try it out, and he's been working out so far. So
that's good. So you guys, I know, I mean, you just released that, you know, your first album, your first full length back, you know, just within the last month or so, right? Just like just recently.
yeah, um, which was a pain in the ass because I was afraid to release it because I didn't know if there was going to be more backlash with the
Mm,
former members. And
yeah. Well, and that's always tricky, especially like the that's the thing that like most people don't understand about being in a band is like the business side of things that can get very tricky later, you know, especially if people leave, you know, and it really kind of depends on what kind of agreements you had, you know, if you ever even talked about it. And a lot of times in band situations, you know, people aren't really thinking about it. It's like in the moment, you're like, oh, we're just making stuff together and it's fun. And you're not really considering that, like, what would happen if somebody left? You know, what do we do with, like, the rights to that? Like, who controls the rights? Who's still making residuals or like royalties off of any sales that are made of albums or plays or, and it can get really, really hairy really fast in situations where you start losing members. Um, I've always tried to cover that stuff as much as possible with bandmates, like right off the bat, being like, look, I know this is the part that like nobody really wants to talk about, but we have to because it's just to protect everyone, like including you. Like we want to make sure that everybody's being treated fairly if something were to happen and somebody were to leave. And I mean, a lot of times, you know, when a member leaves, they're just like, fuck it, like I don't care, do whatever you want, like I'm moving on and doing something else. And in those cases, you know, as long as you have documentation to prove that that's what they said, you're pretty much in the clear. Like, but it can still be kind of an situation, that's for sure.
and like we were being repped by a company in South Bend called Rectulian. The guy who owns that company is working with us as our publicist. So when all this stuff started blowing up, he was like, "Don't release the album, pull it off the shelves." I didn't know what to do
Mm-hmm.
because I have the members who left are saying drop the album. Then in my other ear, I'm hearing don't drop the album. So,
Well, I mean, if you, I personally think it's like if you've got all the former members that were involved in it that are giving the sign off and being like, no, put it out. Like it's, you know, we want it out there. You know, yeah, we're no longer a part of it, but we want it out there. You know, Yet again, as long as you have documentation to prove that this is what they've said, you're pretty much in the clear. And I mean, yeah, it can be kind of a, I can see from a PR standpoint how it can be a little bit of a nightmare to like explain, where it's like, yeah, there's this new album that just dropped and basically none of the people on it are still in the band. It's a different lineup now, but it's still there and these songs are still going to get played. Like, it's sometimes hard to explain that. And I could see from like a PR perspective where it could be like a nightmare and just be like, maybe it'd be easier to just don't release it. Or is there a way that you can like re-record it? Because there's something you could do like, and I know like when you put as much time as it takes into recording an album, especially like the last thing you want to do is not put that shit out. Like, because you put so much time and energy into it that it's like, I can't just not put this out.
And that's what made it like, that's what sucked for me on this situation was everything that went into this production was out of my own pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So like nobody else helped out with it. It was came straight out of my
Mm-hmm.
and it cost like about $1,000 to
Oh
get it.
yeah. Oh yeah, which is still pretty damn good. Like that you were able to pull. Because I mean, I've listened to it. It's top notch, like production wise. Like the fact that you were able to pull that off with just like $1,000 is still really impressive. Like, because it's definitely got a very professional production to it.
And there's still one song that we weren't able to put onto it because it was $100 a song. We only had 9 songs on the album.
Mm. Yeah.
There is indeed a track missing off that.
Did you ever even have like a rough demo version of it or something that like you could put on as like a here's a bonus track like
Uh, we do, but it wasn't. It wasn't really composed by like it wasn't one of my ideas for
Mhm.
songs. It came from the other guitar player.
Gotcha.
And here's where the problem lies: when those members jumped ship, they formed a new band out of spite of us. I don't know, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know if they plan on using it
Mm.
for their project or.
Yeah, I've been there before where it's like, I mean, I know even from for myself, like I've taken songs from one project to another, especially if it was one that wasn't ever released. If it was one that was never put out and it was one that I owned, it was my song. I've moved it from one project to another before. I've actually there's been situations where I've actually redone a song that was on a project that I released, but I was the sole owner of it, so it didn't matter. I basically gave myself permission to re-record it on a different project, so it didn't, I didn't have any real legal things to worry about. But yeah, I mean, it sucks that like that kind of stuff can comes into all of it, like because I know like most musicians they just want to play, they just want to write and they want to play, like dealing with all the other side stuff that happens, all the business stuff, all the drama that can come up from it, like nobody really wants to deal with that, like nobody wants to, that's not a part of that anybody likes, but unfortunately it happens a lot in bands. I mean, there's that old saying. I think I saw it like on like Guitar Hero years ago. Like in the loading screen, they would have those little like blurbs of things they would say, and it was like a band is a dysfunctional family that you choose. And it's like that is 100% accurate. Like it absolutely is. Like you get to know those guys or girls or whoever's in the band. Like you get to know them sometimes closer than your own family. Like whether you want to or not know certain things about them. Like, and then that leads into some fun stuff later on down the road sometimes. But no, I'm excited though, like after hearing what you guys had put out, and then like seeing that even with the big change of having members leave and such. Like, I'm glad to see that you're still pushing forward with it. Like, you're still like, you know, you're not just dropping it, which is a good thing, I think. And um, have you guys? I know you've only had this new lineup for a pretty short time, but in the time that you've had, does it seem like everybody's picking it up pretty quick and
Um, quicker than normal, actually, quicker than I thought. Really, I didn't at first. I didn't think we were going to be able to maybe come back before the end of the year.
Mhm.
And after yesterday, I'm getting a little more confident with maybe we might be able to come back by New Year's,
That would be
hopefully.
pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool. Have you guys like is your primary focus right now just like making sure everybody knows all the material that's there so far, or have you guys been playing around with writing some new stuff already, or
Kind of a mixture of both. We've given the new guys to try like the task of trying to learn like 2 songs every week.
mm-hmm.
So by the time they come back, we have 2 new ones where
you at least have enough knowledge of that you could, get through it in a set rehearsal?
however it does suck because we have our drummer has a electric kit at home,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a kit where we practice where he comes and uses during practices. But so I guess it's like a $400 electric drum kit, and his
Mm.
snare went out
Oh,
for
I've
it.
been there.
And he got a hold of Guitar Center where he bought it from. They said, "Oh yeah, it's just a manufacturer problem. It's a manufacturer. You have to get a hold of the manufacturer." He's like, "Well, why did I buy the warranty from you guys?"
Oh, they wouldn't even like cover it under their warranty because it was a manufacturer defect.
Apparently not. They pretty much told him, "Oh, screw you."
Yeah, this is like, why did I spend the extra money then?
It's a $200 warranty, and he can't even use it. Like,
Dude, like I bought an electric kit back in 2017, and I don't think a single piece of it is still usable to this day. Like at by this point, like I have beat the ever loving fuck out of all of it, and like all the triggers are just messed up, and it it just doesn't want to work. Like, and I even went in and fixed the triggers myself, like repaired them, and it just, yeah, it just I'm too hard of a player when it comes to playing drums. I hit too hard, and it's like I know on an electric kit you're not supposed to do that. It's an electric kit. You don't have to hit it so hard. But it's like I can't help it. It's just how I play.
when you get into you know the the moment, it's
Oh yeah, when you're really getting into it, it's like you're just hitting that shit, and then all of a sudden it's like, oops.
like I remember having a Rock Band drum kit, and like
Hmm.
the pads were just warping, and
Yeah, and those things literally are exactly the same as how an electronic drum kit works. Like they're based on they use triggers just like a regular, any other electronic drum kit. It's just like a more simplified version for playing the game. But like I remember watching people hook up their like high dollar electric drum kits to their PlayStations and stuff and playing, Rock Band and Guitar Hero and stuff with these like super expensive, electronic kits. But I don't know, like having an electric kit is nice for like just practicing in a space, like especially if you like live in an apartment or something. It's nice to have because you can kind of still play around without pissing your neighbors off too much. Like, as long as you're not like living above somebody, because then they're still going to hear you stomping on the floor. Like, trust me, I know from experience. My neighbors were not too happy with me about that when I first got it. Luckily, though, I ended up moving to like an apartment that was on the ground level, and then nobody complained. Nobody heard it after that. But um, it's definitely nice to have a rehearsal space where like you can have an actual full setup. Using like everything, and not have to only use electronic stuff for rehearsals. Um,
And luckily, where we practice is like out in the boons. Go too far, you
mm.
might be seeing hearing like banjos or something. But
That's always the best because it doesn't matter how late you play or anything. You can't piss anybody off really. Like it's like for years, with this podcast, like as I know because you guys. The sad thing is that you guys hit us up about coming on to the podcast literally like right when we were shutting down. And so it was like, I was like, man, I wish I could, but the podcast just isn't, we're not doing it really anymore. And, of course, I posted a little video explaining a little bit of what had happened, as to why, but it, having that space, like our studio space, which we still have, we just use for our own projects and stuff right now. It's not really set up for like it was for the podcast. Um, but like, unfortunately, like it's in town. Like we are in town. Like they're neighbors like within 15 feet either side of the property. And so we've had to soundproof the hell out of that place as much as possible to try to reduce the volume levels, and we still like tend to not do anything in there after a certain time just to be safe, because it can, the last thing you want to have happen is to be in the middle of like a recording session or something and have the cops show up and be like, hey, you guys are being too loud, we gotta have it turned down. But if you could be out in the middle of nowhere and nobody cares, that is the best. It's the absolute best. But so when did you like start playing music? Like when did you like pick up, playing guitar and stuff?
I was unsuccessfully trying to learn how to play throughout high school.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't really get the hang of it, and finally, I just it all just started making sense to me, and then I just from playing Guitar Hero, I've been wanting to play. Um, and as you know, Guitar Hero, that's not a real guitar. That's a
No, but it,
controller.
it does teach you quite a bit. I mean, it teaches you timing, and it teaches you it like the some of the finger positions that they put you in is ways that you would actually stretch your hand to do for, like, obviously you're not forming the actual chords, but you are, sometimes stretching your hands in ways that are very similar to how you would with playing. So I think that it was an amazing tool for teaching, people how to just get the basics,
You're right.
to pick up an actual guitar to do it.
Well, then in 2012 they released I don't know, a new game called Rocksmith.
Oh yeah, that game was the shit because it was actually using a real guitar.
And I just started playing that because myself being a gamer, I just not only a gamer, but a gamer trying to learn how to play guitar. So it was just two worlds mixed in one. So
well, that's cool. Yeah, how long did it take you before you like went doing that, before you were like, oh wow, I can actually do this? Like I can actually play.
It probably about 2 months.
That's pretty
just
good.
Playing it. But obviously, the more I played it,
Oh yeah, as with anything, it's practice makes perfect, as they say.
And like the bass player, when everybody jumped, the bass player ended up moving over to guitar, and he like kind of weird because that's exactly what I did when our original vocalist got arrested. And the main reason why I did that was I wanted to get better at, I truly try to strive myself to be a better musician than I was yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and the old guitar player, he was, it was weird. He was satisfied with where he was skill wise. He didn't see himself going any further with his skills. Me, on the other hand, like I just was just saying, I want to get better. So kind of have like a teetering effect here. Uh, I need someone to help push me to get to that next level, and he just wasn't doing it.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up leaving. The bass player moved over to guitar, and he's helped me more the past 2 months than the old guitar player did in like years. So
Some people are just, I feel like there are more gifted at being able to teach as well, and some people just aren't. Like I have, like, because of my ADHD shit, like it can sometimes be hard for me to teach people things. Like I have people ask all the time about having me either teach playing guitar or drums or whatever. And when it comes to drums, I tell people, first, do you have any sense of rhythm at all? Like, do you understand, like, can you clap on a beat? Like, can you? If not, I'm sorry to say this, I don't want to take the time to try to teach you how to play drums, because it's going to be a lot more work and I don't have the patience for that. Like, if you have a basic understanding of like how to keep time, I could teach you how to play drums pretty quickly. It's not that hard. It's just practice, much like with guitar, where it's like it's just repetition, 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 eventually locking your mind and your eyes and your hands, the whole hand-eye coordination thing. It's just getting that in sync. Same with playing guitar. Like, it's like you said, once you start getting it, once your brain starts to get it, it's like, oh, okay. I mean, because I was the same way. I picked up guitar like when I was like 10 for the first time, 9 or 10. My dad had an acoustic guitar around the house, and I was playing around on that a little bit, but like I didn't really understand it or anything. And I bought a guitar when I was like 10, 11, somewhere in there. And I got so frustrated with it, I just sat it on its stand and didn't touch it for like a year. And then I got back to it. I picked it back up and just started playing with it. And then, I had met somebody around that time who was another kid that was into music and was starting to show me stuff. Like, here, he was a natural teacher. Like, he's really good at being able to just like explain something really simply. Like, this is what this is, because I had no technical background. I had no theory. I had no nothing. I was all by ear. So, he's like, well, this is what this is. Like, and I remember when he first was like explaining guitar tablature to me, like, and I figured out like, oh, shit, like I can read that easy. Then it made it like a whole new world. Like, I could like look up songs that I knew and I could see how to play them. And it was like, okay, I know how this should sound. So I'm going to keep playing it until I get it to sound the way it's supposed to. But it was like, once that started to click, it just suddenly seemed like it exploded, and I was picking up all sorts of stuff. So, I mean, I fully understand how that goes. It's it's a fun experience for sure. Um, uh, so what are your guys' plans for, are you just kind of taking it as it comes and seeing how things go, or are you already looking at like starting to schedule stuff for, the beginning of next year or into the spring, or I mean, obviously, I don't want to have you give away too much stuff too early. Like, if there's stuff you don't want to give away just yet, you don't have to. But
we've had an offer for March, and I thought that's when we'd be coming back.
mm-hmm.
And then after yesterday, I was like, we might be able to pull something off here. On top of that, we're also looking to move forward from
Mm-hmm.
the past.
Oh yeah.
Get back in, record like maybe an EP.
Mm-hmm.
something else was like brought up about maybe going back in and record a old single of ours with updated um, parts.
Mm-hmm. Kind of a reworked, reimagined version of a song.
Uh, you know, the with the updated vocals, updated maybe live drums. Yeah, that was the other one.
Yeah,
Because
it's one of those things where like I know from being a producer myself and doing production, it is so much easier to program stuff these days and program them like I can program drums exactly the way that I play them or how the drummer would play them. But there is something that is completely different feel about hearing a recording that is physically being played by a drummer versus a recording where it's like the drums have been programmed to, you know, be perfect or to be exactly the way you want it, which from the like I said, from a production standpoint, it makes things way easier because it's way less work. Like, because you're using samples that are already, they're already done. I don't have to record anything. I just have to tell it what to play. Like, so that's easier, but it just there's something totally different about the feel of having a live drummer on a recording. Like, there's nothing quite like it.
well, when we recorded the first EP, we didn't have a drummer
Mm.
because our original drummer dipped out. So we literally went in missing one member. We recorded the EP, and then we found somebody. It ended up not working out with him, but
Mm.
we recorded the first 3 tracks for the album that just came out, and then that drummer decided to dip.
Mm-hmm.
So it has kind of been our luck of the draw there with recording. So
I know how it can go. It's part of why when I was younger, I just learned to play everything myself and just recorded everything myself because it was like frustrating relying on other people. But then the downside to that, like the flip side to that is that then you get too used to like doing everything yourself that either A, you come across to other people as being like an arrogant like perfectionist or like other people don't want to work with you because they're like, well, I want to have a say in stuff and you just do everything yourself. And it's like, well, no, I mean, I want other people to do things. I just do stuff by myself because for the longest time I couldn't rely on anybody to do anything. But so you're looking at like in the spring, probably, hopefully being back in full swing by spring, is that kind of the goal?
uh, that's what we're shooting for, at least. So
Well, that's good. That's good. I'm glad to see you're still continuing on with it, despite all the changes and things that inevitably happen. When I was, watching it kind of from the outside, seeing the things that were happening, stuff that was when you guys were making announcements publicly about members leaving and stuff like that, I was like, oh, well, hopefully that's not like the end of the whole thing because, like, it, I from watching from the outside, I kept watching. It seemed like you just kept like you were slowly rising more and more and more. Like you were getting more listeners, more fans. Like the production stuff was getting better, the songwriting was getting better. It was like it just kept progressing, and I was like, oh man, this would suck to just stop or to like because you were doing so well with like progression. Like it was getting better and better, and you know so I'm glad to see that you're still, you know, holding the torch, keeping it going. Is there anything you want to, you know, let anybody know about? Any, I'll make sure that when we post this, that I put, all the links and everything to all your guys' stuff and everything in there so that, people can click on it and go and listen and, check out the website and all that stuff. Um, But is there anything that you wanted to talk about? I mean, I know it's like, these things are, it's like kind of formal, but kind of not with what I do here. It's like, obviously it's like I want to cover what you're, doing musically and stuff. That's kind of the whole purpose of what we started this for. But it's also like kind of just a conversation between people too. Like I think that most people when they listen to a podcast or watch it or whatever, especially when it comes to like bands and musicians and things, they do so to kind of get to know or see the people involved like
Right.
as the people they are, not like as the image or like, oh, it's not just about the music. Um, it's like you were talking about earlier about being like a gamer. It's like I completely understand because I've been a video game nerd for years too. So it's like it's like I got other stuff outside of music that I also enjoy doing, and I also do stuff.
Um, I can't really think of anything else, outside of the whole music thing.
Mm.
I'm pretty boring. So
I feel the same way about myself. I feel like if I didn't have music and my history in music in the scene over the last 15, 20 years, like I really don't have much of a life to talk about. But
it, and being the introvert, it sucks too because
mhm.
I go out to shows, play a show, and then like 10 minutes later, here's come somebody I don't even know. It's like, oh, hey guys, you guys were awesome. I'm like, oh, thank you. I don't know you, but
It's the weirdest thing. Like I had really, really bad like anxiety and like social phobia stuff when I was especially like a teenager into my early 20s. It was like but yet you could put me on a stage and I had no problems being in front of a bunch of people acting a fool. But that the moment that I got down off that stage and had to be in the crowd of people, I just felt really awkward and really weird and like I was like I don't know if I like this. Which is funny because like as you can tell, I have no problems talking. Like I could talk forever. But it's like there's something about it's not for me right now, it's not anywhere near as bad as it was then. Like I feel like as time's gone on, the more I've kind of reconditioned myself to be a bit more of an extrovert. Um it's an extroverted introvert. Like, if I had my choice, I'd rather just be chilling at home, like, playing video games or hanging out with my family or like, working on music stuff. But I will force myself to go out and do things if I have to, or like, I can put myself in those situations and be okay. It's just taken a long time to be comfortable with it.
right.
And I still feel weird and awkward like at shows even to this day. And I've been playing in bands for over 20 years now. And like it's still weird for me to have people come up to me and be like, "Dude, that was awesome. I really loved what you did." Like I'm like, "Thanks. Cool." Like I mean, I don't know what to say. Like I appreciate the fact that you liked it. Like I'm not I'm definitely not the rock star, the rock god kind of personality. That's just not it's not me. Some guys are really good at that, which is why you have a front man. Like if you've got a really good front man, like they can be that, they're the face and the voice of it, they can be the one that does all the talking and is really outgoing and flamboyant and like gets everybody's attention. And it's like you can kind of deflect it off of you and onto them. Be like, oh yeah, you're really good at like, you know, being the rock star. Go ahead and you take that. I don't really want to. But it's nice though to have conversations with the members of the band that are the introverts though, because what's funny is a lot of times the more introverted members of the band are actually the ones who tend to have the most like creative input on that band, behind the scenes. Like I can't tell you how many bands I've met over the years where, you know, the quietest guy in the band is the one who started the band and writes like 90% of the material, and you would never know it. Like, but it's just like, you know, the creative types for some reason, you know, can be that way.
That's one of the reasons I've fallen so much in love with the band, a Finnish band called Nightwish.
Yeah, yeah, I know Nightwish. Yeah,
Uh, the keyboard player usually writes, the mass portion of their stuff, and he's the brain behind all the music. So
yeah, and it's fun. It's fun to find that kind of stuff out. Like, it's like, oh, well, really, that guy, that's the one who wrote everything. Like, I didn't even realize that. Like, that's cool.
people be like, "It sounds like Disney gone metal," and he just sit there like, "Thank
Pretty
you."
much. Pretty much. That's kind of exactly what I was going for. Oh, well, so okay, so there's something we could talk about a little bit. What have been your albums or artists this year that have been like your primary go-tos? Like, say you're just doing something and you got your earbuds in and you're like, what has been like the artist or album that you've been going to the most this year?
um, I haven't really been paying attention about like this past year.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of been uh, I've been getting a little more into the electronic horror stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The Electric Callboy.
Oh God, yeah. Their stuff
Uh,
is so good. It's so good. Like, it's funny because I remember hearing some of their stuff before the vocalist change and the name change and everything. And I remember hearing some of it then, and they had it then too, that like that sound a little bit. But boy, buddy, during the pandemic, they just exploded, like fucking exploded. And I think it's because they had that perfect balance of like comedy with the fact that like the songs were legit bangers. Like holy shit, these guys are actually really good, but they're fucking hysterical and they don't take things too seriously, and like they
it's like
just have fun with it. Like
it's like Tenacious D
yeah,
in a
exactly.
way.
It's that same idea of like we're just having fun with it. Like but we're actually really good. I mean, like when I was a kid, obviously dating myself a bit, but when I was a kid, during like the grunge era and the alt rock era of the 90s, there was a band called the Presidents of the United States of America, which were kind of the same thing. Like they were a goof band, a fun band. They didn't take themselves very seriously, but then they started becoming huge, like just out of nowhere. And even they were surprised. They're like, "What do we do? Why is this happening? Like, we're kind of a joke band. Like, like, it's we have songs like about peaches and candy and like lyrics that really don't make any sense because they're not supposed to. They're just dumb songs like for fun, and suddenly we're becoming huge. Like, um, but yeah, Electric Callboy. Oh my god, like everything they have put out in the last year and a half, 2 years, it seems like has one upped the previous single. Like every single seems to have gotten better than the last. And I don't know how that's possible because like when they did Hypa Hypa and they dropped that, and I was just like, there is no way anybody's going to be able to top this. Like, both in how good it is musically and how fucking hilarious this video is. Like, and the fact that they do it live too, they come out in the whole get up and everything for that song live. I think it's great. Oh man.
But if we're talking like the last year, around this time frame, uh, this band quickly rise to be one of my favorite bands, Ice Nine Kills.
Oh yeah, I know those guys.
Their last album I've been just like hardcore listening to. Uh, it's gotten me more open to more horror films. So
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, they really latched on to that whole scene, and that's kind of what has had them, I feel like, be so successful in the last several years. Has like once they found that identity, because see, I first heard them and saw them, I actually met them at Warped Tour in 2008, and they were like a nobody band basically. I mean, like nobody knew who they were. Like literally, like the dude came up to me and handed me a demo, like in a sticker. Like that's like where they were at the time, like just mingling around with everybody. And I remember that, and then seeing them now, it's like once they found their little niche, like that thing that really clicked, it just caused them to explode. Like and they do it so well. Like they mix that horror aspect in so well that it's like it's a perfect fit for them. And not everybody can get away with it. I mean, in some ways, like it can come across really cheesy if it's not done right. And I think if you have a little bit of a tongue in cheek or kind of a wink and a nod that it's like, yeah, this is kind of cheesy, you can get away with it a little bit more. Like, I think that's how bands like, like Guar have been able to be so successful since the 80s, is because of the fact that, you know, they're like, yeah, this is theater. This is not like, we're not the greatest musicians in the world. We're not the greatest band in the world, but we're going to pretend like we are. And we're going to think that, like, we're going to have these characters who think that they are, and they're these crazy aliens from another planet. And, it's, it's outrageous and just ridiculous, but it works because of the fact that they're like, yeah, we know it's cheesy. Like, that's the fun of it. Like, that's part of what makes it so great. Like, I think sometimes if you take stuff like that too seriously, it just comes across. Yeah. I've known some people. I've known some bands that like we're trying too hard to like make that work for them, and it's like it's not working for you because you're trying too hard. Like, stop trying so hard. Just let it. If it's something that's naturally a part of you, let it happen. You know, don't force it. What's your what is the let me put it this way. Who's the artist that you think probably influenced you the most in like learning to play and or even writing like what you do now? And is it the one that you still will like go back to, and listen to for inspiration, today, that you did years ago when you first started, that still has like the same impact on you?
uh, Time for the cringe part.
Oh, that's
Uh,
dude. I honestly, I don't shame anybody for any music they listen to for the most part. Like, everybody's influenced by all sorts of things. Like, you'd be surprised at the kind of shit I grew up with that influenced me. Like, most people don't even know who these bands or artists are, and if they do, they're like, "What?"
um, so growing up, I was a huge Avenged Sevenfold fan.
Oh, dude, Early Avenged. I fucking loved Early Avenged. Like, especially. I feel like the only thing that I kind of made me fall off was like when they started trying too hard to sound like Metallica. That was when it was
yeah.
like, I mean, okay, it's not bad, but it's just like it's kind of you're not. I kind of miss what set you apart at the beginning. I mean, I don't have it with me. I still have a wallet. My wallet that I have to this day is an Avenged Sevenfold wallet that I've had since 2009. So yeah,
And like
no shame
it
in
seems
that.
like since their drummer passed away, like
Mm.
they're just kind of going downhill.
I
And
think it depends on how you look at it, because on the one hand, I feel like popularity wise, they've gotten bigger since then. But from a music standpoint, I think especially people who were into them like I was earlier on, it feels like it's kind of gotten less and less creative, because I feel like another case in point, another artist that I'll kind of compare it to is like Five Finger Death Punch, When Five Finger Death Punch first came out, I remember listening to like their first singles and EPs and stuff early on, and I'm like, shit, this is like some heavy stuff. Like this is some good stuff. And then what happened was they found their crowd, and now they just cater just to that audience. Which, I mean, from a business perspective, is smart. Like, you
Right.
know, it allows you to still keep making this your career, but from a creative perspective, from other musicians in particular who listen to it, like, oh, feels like you sold out. Like you're not the same as you were. I mean, and I'm like I said, I'm old. In my era, it was Slipknot. I was 14 years old when the self-titled Slipknot album came out. So I was in that perfect age demographic for Slipknot when they came out. And I will fully admit that, yeah, I mean, especially since Volume 3 in 2004, they have gone more mainstream. They have made things that are more radio friendly kind of stuff, but sometimes that happens. Sometimes you just you do what you do because you're bored with doing the same thing over and over again. You switch to something else, or you
It,
do like I've talked about in projects that like I'm currently in where we've had discussions where it's like we need to come out right out of the gate having a very wide range of sounds so that people don't ever expect us to just be one thing. Like, because sometimes when you create a fan base based on one specific sound, then when you evolve and you change and you bring in other elements and you become something else, those old fans get mad at you. They're like, oh, you're not the same band anymore. You've sold out. Oh, this and that. It's like, well, we've always been like this. Like we've always listened to music like this. We've always like written stuff like this. You guys just might not have seen it or heard it because it didn't get put on the albums, but we've always been like this. So it's like when I started playing drums for Quickflower, I was, one of the things I was telling those boys was like right off the bat, when we start putting stuff out, when we start writing material and things, let's try and be as wide as we can be so that we don't get stuck in a box that people are expecting us to sound one specific way. And then if we put something
and
out that's completely different, they're like, well, you're not the same band. You suck. It's like the members of that band are wildly different when it comes to the influences. Like we all share some influences, but we also have some way different things that we bring into it. And but yeah, I mean, yeah, I Avenged is one of those that I'm only disappointed in because I feel like once they started trying to sound too much like an already established band, it's like, okay, now you've lost your own identity, but not completely. I mean, I still hear, I they still have their distinct moments. There's things that you'll hear and you'll be like, oh yeah, I can tell that is an Avenged song. Like,
I think part of it too is like it's like you're not watching them grow up. You're like listening to them grow up. Like
exactly.
because they started off like a hardcore metalcore,
Oh yeah.
and they went into like the more rock, and now they're just keep going on.
I think sometimes fans we have a problem in this country in particular of people being way too like cliquish when it comes to music genres. It's like if you are this kind of music, you have to stay in this and you have to only like this kind of music. And it's like the truth is that everybody else in the world, if you go anywhere else and look anywhere else, everybody's just like, no, I like this and I like this and I like that and I listen to like all sorts of stuff. Nobody judges anybody about it. Nobody gives a shit. It's like, so what? You listen to classical music, you listen to some country, you listen to some hip hop, you listen to some metal, like you kind of put it all together, whatever. And honestly, that's where we get, you know, new sounds, new genres. It's by mixing these things. If you stay in the same thing, it's just going to all start sounding the same. And to be honest, for me in the last few years, I've gotten really burnt out with the metalcore scene as a whole, because every fucking band sounds exactly the same. Like, they're all using the same plugins, they're all using the same, drum samples with programmed drums, they're all using the same things over and over and over again. And it's like, what is setting you apart from everybody else? Nothing. Nothing's setting you apart. You sound just like everybody else, which makes you forgettable, because nobody's going to pick your song out from anybody else unless they're a real diehard fan. You know what I mean? Like, I was listening to the metal, like, modern metalcore playlist the other day on Spotify, and I'm just like, literally all these bands sound the same now. What's happening? Like, come on, have some, like, of your own identity.
That's kind of why I've kind of like leaned more toward like mixing my own style in with it.
Yeah.
My own style being the symphonic metal.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I've always thought sets you apart, like your guys' stuff apart from the modern metalcore stuff, is that it has a bit of that proggy or symphonic metal, power metal kind of stuff woven into the metalcore, which is cool. Like, it makes it bigger. I mean,
another band I've also been into growing up was Trivium.
Oh, Trivium. So, Matt Heafy's a god.
I've always like wanted to combine like the melodicness of Trivium in with like the symphonic metal stuff. So
that's awesome.
However, the only problem is I can't shred like Trivium. So
dude, I feel the same way. Like, I tried so hard for years, like even way back when we had our like full force metalcore band back in 2010, whatever that was. Like, when we were doing that, like, I spent so long trying to learn arpeggio sweeps and all that kind of stuff. And like, my hands, I have these, like, I don't know if you can see, I have these short stubby fucking fingers, and it makes it really hard to do certain shapes, especially lead shapes, because my hands just don't stretch like that. I can't get my fingers to do it. They're too short. Like, so I tried and I tried and I tried, and like, I'll still every now and then at practice or whatever, if I'm jamming, I'll like sit there and try and like warm back up with those like arpeggios and those sweeps, but it's just like, God, I suck. Like, I could never shred like that. Meanwhile, I've got friends that like could just pick it up and just like melt your face off with like, and then they just like, it's not that hard. I don't understand. What's the problem? Just like, man, fuck you. But, well, man, we have now been talking for like almost an hour. I'm glad that I was able to make this happen. It's cool too that like you're gonna be the first guest back for the podcast since it's been shut down for the last couple of years. I'm interested to see what happens with it, because it's not exactly the same setup as we had before. Of course, it would be nice to still have everything in the studio and to be able to bring people in and have, everybody sit down on a couch and talk and do the sessions and stuff again. But man, it's just not feasible right now. It's so much work, and it's just not possible to do. But being able to just do these kinds of things where I can just be like, hey, you got an hour on a, like today being a Monday morning, like, you got an hour to sit and, just shoot the shit. And, I can very quickly put this together and drop it. I don't have to put a ton of time into it, like I had to before, which is awesome. And I'm glad that, especially because of the fact that, like I said, you guys tried to get on right around the time that we were like ending the podcast. So I was like, it's kind of like, I kind of had to have you come on as like the first guest back when I did it, because it was like I wanted to have you guys on then, but it was like by the time that you were reaching out and everything, it was like I did think about it for a second. I was like, maybe I could do one more episode and have you guys come in, but it was like, no, I don't have time for this. I've got too many other things that are more important right now. I can't spend that much time on it, but had to make sure that like doing this first episode back, like that I got a hold of you and was like, hey, how about you come on to be the first one? Like, because I wanted to get you on before and didn't work out, but
Right.
and hopefully at some point, there is talk that at some point we will potentially do some more studio sessions and things again, and maybe we can get you guys in there and have you do a couple of tracks live in our studio and stuff. Um, that would be fun, but that's down the road a ways.
Right.
Once I can figure out how to do that without it absolutely eating up all of my life like it did before. But man, thanks for coming on and like talking to me, and it's been nice. It's been weird. I feel like I definitely feel rusty as fuck doing this. I'm not as used to doing it as I was before. Um, but luckily with having you on, you're an easy guest to talk to, so it's not like it's too hard to it's too hard to like I'm not bringing somebody in that like I'm stumbling over because I'm it's like I we've been friends for a while. It's cool. Like we send each other funny music memes and shit, and like
Well, thanks for having me.
yeah, of course, man. Of course. Like I said, it was nice having you on, and I'm sure I'll bring you back on again at some point once you guys are even more established and having more stuff to do. Don't be afraid to like hit me up at some point and be like, "Hey, we got stuff coming out. Like, we want to come on and talk." And you maybe do one where I can get, all you guys together on one, and uh talk with everybody and stuff. But yeah, thanks again, man, and you have a good rest of your day, and
You
like I
too.
said, don't be afraid to hit me up with stuff in the future when you got things coming out, and we'll definitely bring you back on and promote more stuff. Get you out there more. All
Sounds good.
right, man. Well, you have a great day.
You too.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Well, that was it. Thank you guys again for checking out this podcast and everything. It's kind of weird doing it again, that's for sure. But I want to thank you guys for watching, and I want to thank Brayton for coming on um, and just hanging out with me for an hour or so and talking. Can't wait for you guys to see what's coming up and who I get to talk to again. I've got some cool things in the works. There's some people I'm talking to. Um, it's gonna be cool. But thanks again.